So, so Jenny and I today are going to talk about healing your inner child and certain coping mechanisms and trauma healing responses that really help you get back into the flow of the natural state of your body whenever you've gone through like a traumatic situation or just a series of events in your life growing up or anything like that that kind of makes you feel like you're in freeze mode, aka some symptoms of like anxiety and depression, which I think we've all
Association.
faced at some
Yeah.
point in our life. You're listening to this. So yeah, Jenny,
Yes.
what are some of the things that like you do for just kind of like relaxing your mind and your body? And what do you feel like maybe stems that for you?
Um, so in terms of like inner child healing, so I think part of it is relaxation, definitely. I think another part of it is learning how to have fun again, which can be relaxing for the body. So some things I do is really anything that like I loved as a child. Um, you can spend time with children. You can I recently
I
did like
saw that.
a coloring book. Like it sounds silly and like trivial, but it's like getting into that energy of like allowing your inner child to be messy, to be creative, but also protecting them and like having that like motherly or parental role as well. um I think is really important for healing. And like through that, you start to see ways in which you were conditioned, or ways that you were parented as a child. Like I know for me, when I started doing this type of healing, I was like, wow, I'm really trying to like control myself. And I'm like, I need to like allow myself to be a little bit freer, to allow myself to be silly and not sit here judging my thoughts or the things I say. Cause yes, you want to be careful about the things you say, but if you're just spending time with yourself, like, why are you judging?
Yeah,
Why can't you just allow yourself to like have those moments of like, I'm a child again? And through
just
that, I'm
be.
I'm able to focus better. I find that like when I allow myself to have fun and to relax, I'm able to do work better because I don't feel burnt out or like resentful. So I think it's like really important to do. And I'm still kind of learning how to do it and like figuring out ways to heal my inner child in a way that like feels doesn't feel overwhelming, because I think it can feel that way at times because you're faced with all these wounds that
So true.
naturally like come up through this process.
Yeah, like sometimes you don't even know what's hindering your growth and like what's keeping you. Sometimes I feel like you feel like you're keeping your emotions in a box, but you're like, well, that doesn't make sense because I've talked about it, I've journaled about it, I've gotten it out, but it's still there. Like it's still like lingering. Something's there. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it can feel like definitely irritating, like whenever you can't figure out what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. What are things that you like to do? What were things you did as a kid that like you would love to just like do again?
So honestly, like just dancing and like being
Girl,
goofy.
love dancing.
Definitely like just moving my body and
Yeah.
allowing myself to like laugh again.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I feel like being in this adult body, especially working on mindset and like trying to find different techniques for growth and development within our own personal self, sometimes I catch myself being overly serious about certain things. Um, and sometimes that can really, once I'm in that state for so long and like I feel like I'm taking everything so seriously, it starts to like really affect my mental health on the opposite way, which is kind of weird. Like you wouldn't expect that. But I think like just allowing myself to like be goofy and like watch a funny movie or like Theo Vaughn, like love him. So I actually started like he's just so like back and forth like ADD, ADHD. So like I love watching his videos because like he just like makes me laugh. But I just think that it's like moving my body like in any way, and honestly, like stretching and somatic exercises have helped me tremendously. Just being able to like, I don't know, like get that like vibration, I guess, back in like my nerves, and like gives me a sense of like energy also, like on top of it. But like
Yeah.
painting, all that stuff, like I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like so like I'm
I
a
need to do more somatic exercises.
it helps more than like a lot of people think, and it looks silly like when you do it because you're like, how is this helping? Like this
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, but I swear over a certain amount of time, like doing just different somatic exercises, like especially in the morning, and like taking the time just to like be present like with yourself, and being able to like whatever anybody believes in, but like I take time in like prayer, like I listen and I read the Bible, I'm like meditate on the word, and like just like really try to like take that time to like not only just fill my mind with gratitude, but also like gratitude, people underestimate gratitude as well, but like
Yeah.
really
Definitely.
yeah, like, just really being able to, like, be like, "Oh my god, I have, like, breath in my lungs right now." Like, how cool is that? Like, it's like like little things that we take for granted so much. It's like and then it makes you sometimes, like, go back to, like, "Well, why are we even here?" Like, "That's kinda cool that I'm here." Like, I must have a purpose that I woke up today, and, the purpose is still there. Like, God wouldn't, like, allow you to be on this earth still if you weren't here to do something.
Mm.
So that's what helps me a lot.
Yeah. I find like creativity is really helpful too, because you think about like being a child and like how imaginative like children are, and how we kind of like stop ourselves from doing that sometimes because we're like, oh, that's not realistic, or oh, that's like a waste of time and it's silly. Because I feel that way sometimes. I'm like, this is stupid, or like this is silly. Like, what's the purpose of doing this thing? And sometimes the purpose is just to like enjoy it and to like have fun. And I think like that in and of itself like could potentially be a somatic release exercise. Like same with like laughter. Laughter like clears stuff out of the body. Crying clears stuff out of the body. Like allowing your body to move in a type of way, like you were saying, with movement and like creativity, laughter, fun, like feeling safe, like expressing your emotions. Like that's something too that I've learned is like when I cry and I'm like by myself, like I don't really cry in front of other people. Not
Yeah,
for
same.
I am definitely an isolated crier, but I learned how to like console myself through those things. So it actually feels cathartic for me when I do cry. And I feel like when we have anxiety or like we feel this resistance, sometimes it's just like emotions trapped in your body and you need to like let them out somehow.
Yeah. Well, you ever have those cries where you're like
Yeah.
like, but I truly think that, like, that is our body's, like, response, like, get it out, like, just,
Yeah.
like, release it, and truly, like, your body, like, if you, like, shake and, like, move your body, like, it's a natural way to, like, release stress, like, that's what, like,
Yeah.
like, animals do too, like, they always, like, have
Yeah. Like when
dogs
dogs like
shake.
shake after a bath or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It truly like, I had no idea, like, how much, like, brain and bodies, like, function goes so hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's so cool because it's like you think like it's just your brain, but it's your entire nervous system. Like your brain is a part of your nervous system. And if you have nerves throughout your entire body, then like, you know, obviously it's going to be connected in some way. But I think people will separate like mental health from physical health. And like physical health isn't just like exercise and diet, it's also like releasing your emotions, because emotions
Yeah.
like stored in the body will create, you know, certain sensations in the body, like how you like may hold stress in like your upper back or your neck. Like that is, I believe I'm like, where's the research here to say that this is true? But this is spiritually, this is what I feel is true. And I feel like it does kind of have some merit to it, you know, because people do say like, oh, I hold this in this part of the body and this and that part of the body, but
Yeah,
like releasing it somehow so that we can feel our emotions. Like I was talking about that other time, like how I had gone to an exercise class and afterwards I like started sobbing and I was like, wow, I didn't realize I needed to move my body like that because before that I was like, oh, I feel like there's an emotion trapped in my body and I don't know how to get it out.
yeah.
And I exercised and suddenly I'm like sobbing and it was good. And the next day I was way more productive. I felt lighter. Um, but like as children, sometimes we don't always learn how to express our emotions or how to feel our emotions in a way that feels supportive and safe,
Yeah.
you know? And especially if you've struggled with mental health, sometimes it can be hard as an adult to, I'm like speaking for myself here, like to
No,
express emotions.
I think it's
Because
a lot of
maybe
people.
maybe you've been through times where you were overly emotional and you associate that with mental illness. Like that's been something that I've been working on with like my inner child is like, hey, it's okay to feel, it's okay to express yourself. And it doesn't mean that you're crazy or
Yeah,
that you're going to fall apart.
the only time that I would ever judge, or I guess now, like whenever I like judge, my emotions, it's when I act on my feelings and not the real life. Because like
Yeah.
my feelings aren't always valid. Like
Yeah.
I know that they are to me, but they're not to the rest of the world. And sometimes, yeah, like, I don't know how you feel about, like, therapy or, like, even talking to friends and family
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but, like, I I truly think that it helps to a certain degree, but I also think that really truly being able to, like, understand why you feel that way, not getting validation from somebody else or getting a diagnosis from somebody else. It's like, you gotta go sometimes really, really, really deep. And if you wanna figure it out, great. If you don't wanna figure it out, fine. Like, but I also think that you are gonna continue being that way until you are able to, like, fully dive in to, like, what is happening? What am I feeling behind it? And also, how am I counteracting or I should say interacting with other people, and how am I portraying my emotions onto them where they think that it's
Mhm.
negative? And it's all like this circle because once you start piecing like little tiny things together, I promise to anybody listening to this, like I promise that like you will be able to find the sources and how to change those things that you may not like about yourself or whatever it is. It's like
Yeah.
going deep.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a balance of like I think like therapy does have a place. Like I've done like a few different therapies that were really really effective for me. Um and sometimes you need therapy to get to baseline. Like sometimes people are so distraught and in a wreck like they don't have that self-awareness of recognizing those things about themselves. So, I do
Mhm.
think it has a place. Um do I think we need to be in therapy forever? Hopefully not. You know, like I was in therapy for many years and then I became more spiritual and like things started to make more sense to me like instead of me working through just like trauma and emotions, things started to have meaning. And I created that meaning through my like spiritual practices, which I didn't have before that. um the meaning that I would get from things was like, oh, I'm like feeling better, whereas now I'm like this was a part of like a larger plan, like this ties in with all the other things I went through and I'm able to like integrate it more and love myself more because I see these struggles as having a role in my life where I don't know if therapy would really be able to give someone that spiritual perspective of like this is part of a bigger plan and you know I believe in a higher power, whether it's nature, the universe, god, whatever you want to call it. Because you know ethically I don't know if they're really allowed to do that, but I think it's definitely a balance, and like you have to have some sort of stability and awareness to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard to know, like learning what your needs are, and not just your basic needs like food, water, shelter, air, stuff like that, but like what do I need in this moment right now? Like knowing yourself so well. And that's something I'm still working on, is like I'm revisiting this anxiety that I've had in the past, and anxiety is like a freeze response for me. And I'm like, how did I deal with this in the past that I was able to overcome this? And I'm like, I can't even remember, because I'm like kind of half dissociating, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And I said, in our previous conversation, not recorded, that I felt that this was part of my spiritual path, and that I was revisiting these things to integrate them and see how much I've grown. But it's really a reflective moment for me of like learning what my inner child needs in terms of like taking care of my emotional and mental health as well.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I think with inner child healing, have you ever noticed if like you're listening to like a playlist, for instance, and you hear a song that comes on and somehow you feel like your body's like tense, like you just like
Mhm.
don't like it. Like it
Yeah,
has nothing to do with the song, but it's like because you know how music makes you like music is like a way of like feeling certain things.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that like sometimes like our body will like reject it, like, oh, I don't like this song, I'm gonna skip it. But, like, sometimes I've realized, like, instead of just skipping it, sometimes I'm like, "Why?" Like, I'll be like, "Well, why do I like does this bring back a certain moment of somebody? Maybe.
Yeah,
Or does it bring back, like, a memory?" And it's not like I'll get that deep into it, but I just, like, think about it and I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And so I'll allow myself to, like, sit in that for a second, and then the next song, I will put on my absolute most favorite song in the whole world because it's contradicting those bad emotions, that
mm,
feeling to, like, now the utmost high feelings and what makes you feel amazing and good. And it
yeah,
doesn't always work instantaneously, but, like, that is something that, like, I've realized I'll do instead of, like, just skipping through a podcast that maybe I put on or maybe I don't like the way that this guy talks. Like, I will listen to it, and then I'll go do something or put something on that, like, I really enjoy or something that, like, I really relate to.
yeah,
But it's, like, understanding, like, why am I rejecting that?
yeah. Yeah, I I tend to create playlists like based off of like a a vibe, or like what I want to feel or what I want to heal. Like I have an inner child playlist that I'm with music that I loved as a kid. I have like music for like loving myself more, or like just like of the vibration of like the type of music of like how I want to feel. If I want to like feel really good about myself, or if I want to feel motivated, or if I want to feel sad, like I have a feelings playlist where I'm just like, I could cry to this music. Um,
I
but
love
it's
that.
like, huh?
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, it's super helpful. And like, yeah, there are still songs on there that sometimes, like what you're saying, I'll put it on and I'm like, why is this triggering me right now? Um, and sometimes it's helpful to be like, I just don't feel like listening to it right now and not overly analyzing it. And
Mhm.
sometimes it is helpful to be like, oh, it's because this I'm anxious and this is like making me overthink, or it's reminding me of this event or this person and I don't really feel like doing that right now. Like it's not effective for me.
Like, I truly did not know how much just, like, music and things that we not even music, but, like, people that we talk to or, like, certain noises that are around us, like, that can really, like, either set you off or put you in, like, a really good mood. It really just depends, and I think once you start to gain self-awareness, I don't think that that ever goes away. I think that it can either get super you can get super critical with yourself and be really mean to yourself, or you can find a good balance where you're like, "Okay, like, I am self-aware, but, like, it's life, and I'm going to be able to be careful and confident within my own self and just know that, like, whatever happens, and I just wanna not try to react on my feelings as much. I'm working on it. I'm doing this, like, I'm trying, I'm putting in the effort, but I don't need to, like, have somebody else with the validation behind it necessarily, and, like,
Mhm.
that is something that I also am, like, working on. I think that that's, like, a whole lifelong journey because, like, as much as we like to think that, like, "Oh, yeah, like, nobody needs any kind of validation," it's like, yeah, we don't, but, like, what happens when your husband comes home and you cooked him a nice dinner and he doesn't say anything nice to you? Like, or, like,
Yeah,
"Thank you for that." So it's like, your feelings are valid, and they're
yeah.
only valid, though, to certain circumstances and certain people, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of first of all, like the hyper individuality and independence thing is such an American thing. Like you look at like Eastern countries and how much they value like community and family, and it's just so different. And it's I'd be interested to see like what's healthier, like interdependence, which I think is healthier, or like hyper independence. You want to have some level of independence where you're self-sufficient enough that like if you do lose people, you're able to take care of yourself still. But like in
Right.
terms of like the example you gave, like making your husband a dinner and he doesn't say thank you, that's really like he didn't exchange the same energy back to you. So that's not like you're seeking, even seeking validation, you're just seeking like balance and like an equal
Right.
exchange of something because I made you dinner and in exchange you're going to give me appreciation for it and now there's no resentment.
Yeah. Like, I think that that also goes along with, like, the people that are closest to you. I talk about this so much, but, like, I think that it's so important to know the people closest to you. I think you need to know their love language and how they
Yeah.
reciprocate love and how they feel the most loved. And there's for people that don't know, there's like I think there's 5 different love languages, and it's really important. There's a couple key questions. I'll have to find the website. I'll link it in the podcast. But there's, like, certain questions that you can ask somebody, like, on how they can reciprocate love. Like, you may think that it's weird to ask somebody that, but at the same time, it's like you're learning how to love them better, and now, like, you can kinda share that with them, like, "Oh, like, that's interesting because, like, this is how I perceive it." And now it's not saying that you have to always do those things, but it's like, you know when you wanna show them the most love or you want to feel the most loved, you know how to express that to them back and forth,
Mhm.
and it's truly acknowledging somebody else's, like, presence in your life and really understanding and, like, valuing them to, like, the utmost way.
Yeah, definitely. I I took like the love language like quiz like years ago, and I think like the way we show love and the way we like to be given love can be different.
Mhm,
Like I definitely am a gift giver. Like I love giving. Um but I also like for what I like quality time, I like physical touch. Like I don't necessarily need tons of gifts or not even tons, but you know what I mean? Like I'd rather spend quality time and like have like physical intimacy. Uh,
mhm.
Also, like learning the vibration of love. Like this is a spiritual thing right now, but I also have a playlist for that of like what songs make me feel like I love myself and like what does the vibration of love feel like with another person even, so that like when we do get into relationships we're able to tap into that frequency way easier and it's less of like this friction of learning and more like I'm picking up on this and like naturally able to give to this person what they
Yeah,
need and like receive what I need because I'm so in tune with this. Like ideally, right? Like this would be the ideal. But like I do believe in that, like learning to tap into different frequencies of emotions so that you know what they feel like so that when they come up, you're able to respond to them in a healthy way.
yeah. I think that that's so true, and I do think that the way that we reciprocate or give love, like, That can always change because I know that mine has changed over the years, like, even within the past, like, year or 2 years, like, mine used to be, like I used to love getting, like, words of affirmation, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, I like acts of service, and I like doing acts of service. So, like, that could really but, like, I like being the one showing up, and I like being showed up
Yeah.
for. So, like, that's, like, my top one now when before I used to be like, "Oh, like, I just need to hear," but now I'm like, to me, like, words don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like, they're just words.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm sitting here, like, saying, like, "Oh, mine are, physical touch and quality time," but I'm like, it really like, honestly, it's kind of all of them, it just depends on, like,
Who
what's
you
going
are.
on,
Yeah.
you
Like,
know?
or who you're with, I guess.
Yeah, and, like, the ways I give too, like, it depends on what's going on as well because, love isn't, like, just, like, one thing.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of things all at once, and, like, that's why I say, like, tapping into it and, like, kind of learning how to navigate it is so important, but, like, super difficult, I feel like, because it is so vast and, like, has so many different meanings and different ways of being shown in different levels that it's like we don't always know the best way to love ourselves and the best way to love others. That's why, like, healing the inner child, like, we're trying to undo conditioning of, like, these ways that maybe aren't effective or helpful to show love for another person or for ourselves. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
things we do are just, like, subconsciously conditioned things that, like, maybe we don't even know is unhealthy or, like, ineffective for our healing. Or maybe we think something is love and it's not.
Yeah.
Like a toxic relationship that feels really passionate. It's like, oh, we can get through anything because we like have fights and then we make up. And it's like, well, do you want to be fighting all the time? I don't know
Yeah.
if that's super healthy.
I think too, like, once somebody finds out, like, what their current love language is, I think it's especially if you're single, but also if you're in a relationship too, I think yeah, sure, like, you think that that's great coming from another person, but do you do that for yourself? Do that thing for yourself, like, for me, acts of service, so it's, like, taking myself to the gym or, like, taking myself on, like, a cute little date night or, like, doing those things for myself because if I don't do those things for myself and say it's still words of affirmation, if I don't give myself positive affirmations,
Hmm.
why how would I ever expect somebody else to show up for me in that way if I don't do it for myself? And I think
Yeah.
that that's, like, critical, within, like, the healing and, like, self-love journey too, because we sometimes feel like we're missing pieces or, like, something's missing in our life. I know that, like,
Yeah.
I'm a relationship girly, so I'm like, like I told you, like, taking
Yeah.
this time to myself, I'm like, it's not even that, like, I want to just forget about having a boyfriend, no, but I want to be able to show up for myself the way that I would expect somebody else to show up for me, and then
Yeah.
that'll flow, and then
Yeah.
it'll come.
Yeah. That's the journey I've been on. Like I've said, like, I'm a relationship girly too. I'm like, I loved being in a relationship, even when it was hard, and then I realized, that that wasn't always healthy, and I was like, "Wow, I've kind of always been in a relationship," and taking, like, these 5 years of being single and kind of regaining, like, my self-worth and my value, I feel like when I get into a relationship again, it's gonna flow better because if I decide to get into a relationship, it's gonna be because it feels right,
Right.
and not just because, like,
Yeah,
I have a connection with someone and it's like ups and downs and like I'm so much better able to recognize like red flags than I was before. And so I've gained a little bit more trust in myself with being able to spot that. And I think I'll be probably a little bit afraid at first to like get into a relationship just because of past wounds and not wanting to repeat history, but that's why I'm like doing this inner child healing. Like, come on, Jenny, like we got to do this for myself and because like you have things in your life you want to do and I think we as women too like sometimes overemphasize independence to the point where it's like hyper masculine, and like it's just like wounds that we have of like feeling like we need to do everything ourselves and no one's reliable, no one's safe. That's like an inner child wound. That's like,
Yeah.
who made you feel unsafe? Who made you feel like you couldn't express yourself? Who made you feel like you couldn't receive or rely on someone to a point? It's not codependence, it's interdependence,
Yeah.
because you're also giving something back.
Yeah, I think too, like, well, me and you have been talking about this topic a lot just between you and I, but I think like toxic people that have came into our lives, like that person doesn't have to be toxic to anybody else, but they were toxic to you, say, and it hurt you.
Yeah.
That hurt and that feeling doesn't have to be valid to anybody else but you. And it's
Yeah.
not your fault that you got hurt. And
Yeah.
whatever that is, it's truly not feeling guilty for feeling those things. I think that is like the number one thing. Like, don't ever feel guilty for having emotions and feelings. Now, it's how do you express it after that? Like, how do you take those thoughts and the racing thoughts in your head and how are we projecting them out into the world? Are they good? Are you helping somebody else? Are you like, what are you putting out and what is
Mhm.
being brought in? It's almost like having that healthy balance and being able to really regenerate your thoughts in your own head to get positivity out of that instead of giving out negative from that situation.
Yeah, I think like definitely sometimes we can ruminate a little too much and like try to figure out why it's too much and overthink things. And I think definitely taking action, helping others can feel really good, and like reconsidering what you're putting out into the world and like that type of energy, because it's only going to build. And you don't want everything to be love and light all the time. Like, I think there's a time and place for looking at your shadows and looking at the darker things in life, but like doing it in a way that will be positive in the end, like being
Yeah.
effective about it and not like loving yourself through it as opposed to beating yourself up for it.
Yeah, it's like learning how to not be as reactive.
Yeah.
It's just like being intentional about reflecting, but don't be reactive, especially like
Yeah.
if somebody else is involved in the situation or especially to yourself, God forbid. Like you don't want to like sit there and be like, "Oh, here I go again." It's like the
Yeah.
more that you reject those feelings that are coming to you, the more that you like push them down and don't want to feel those things, the more they're going to keep coming up. Because
Yeah.
like negative thinking can be super addicting and I'm sure anybody that has
Yeah.
negative feelings can understand that because like especially negative thoughts and what we say out loud. There was I think I sent the podcast to you. There's this guy talking about like how your negative thoughts and feelings are 4 times more powerful than you just thinking it in your head, like something that just
Mhm.
came up versus you actually saying that out loud and
Mm.
like nullifying it. Like it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, words are so powerful, like with ourselves. And like, again, like this can get a little tricky because that can get into overthinking as well. Like, that's something I struggle with sometimes. I'm like, if I say this, like to myself, is this gonna mental OCD? It's okay.
Same. I got it too.
Yeah. But like the way we treat ourselves is really powerful. And I think like just remembering that the body keeps the score, like that book that talks about trauma. Like sometimes we have a response to something and we try to figure out why, when really we need to like calm our bodies because we're having a physiological response to something which requires a physiological solution to it, and we
Mhm.
can't just think our way out of it, especially if you're having a trauma response. Like, you can't just like think yourself out of trauma. You need to like teach your brain and teach your body that you're safe right now in this moment. The trauma is not happening to you right now. You're safe in this moment. And as you keep doing that, like, this is neuroscience. This is like, there are articles about this. Like, over time, you're going to learn to feel safe even when triggers come up.
Yeah, that's so true. And I've noticed that sometimes what really helps me when I'm like when I have the OCD thoughts kind of rolling through my head, especially if I'm by myself, like not that I'm like schizophrenic,
Yeah.
but like sometimes I'll sit there and I'll talk to myself, be like, well, what am I thinking right now, Bree? Like, what's going on in your
Well,
head?
I talk to myself all the time.
And
Like, you're
I'll
crazy.
say it out loud. And once I say it out loud, I'm like, thank God nobody's around because like I would rather say that out loud to myself and hear it and laugh about it because honestly, it does sound so nuts. Like it sounds so crazy, but I'm like, at least I got that
Yeah.
out of my head. I laughed about it and now I'm able to move on and like proceed
Yeah.
throughout the rest of my day because like sometimes like those thoughts, every thought that you have is not your thought. Like, just know
Yeah.
that, like, certain things can come up in your head and your perceptions of things can
Yeah.
make it feel real. It can make it feel really, really real. And the only thing that we have to base our life upon is our memories. So,
Mhm.
going back, you don't know how somebody else felt during that moment or what their memory is based upon that. So just know that like don't judge yourself in such a negative way because life is not all negative. It's a balance and that is
Yeah.
the beautiful part about life.
Yeah. I think definitely like the thoughts part is really super important and like just a thought is just a thought, you know.
Mhm.
You don't want to assign too much importance to it, like especially if it's something that's negative or like judgmental or, harsh. Because we all have those thoughts sometimes. Like we're human and it doesn't mean anything about you other than you had a thought. So,
Exactly.
you
No,
know,
that's so true. I love that.
yeah.
I think that on the next episode, we should dive like more deeper into like positive versus negative thoughts. So I think that would be like a good topic,
Yeah, I
like
think that
how
would
to
be a
go
really good
into it.
topic.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of
I
this
know we're running out of time.
episode. Yeah. But I think this was really good. I think we touched on a lot of good different aspects of like inner child healing and kind of how it integrates with like being an adult. Um, like adult issues that we face as well as like things that came up in childhood. So hopefully this helps someone else as well.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And we are fairly new to the podcast, so feel free to like, subscribe, all of the above. So more to come, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys too.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.